Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. We're here tonight to enjoy fine hospitality and camaraderie, and I dare say we're doing a good job of that. We've also gathered to celebrate one of the most famous Scots in history, Robert Burns. In doing so, all of us are participating in a tradition that dates back over 200 years. And not only that, but one that's upheld in every corner of the world. The purpose of this particular segment of the evening is to reflect a little bit on the life and works of Burns, to see him as more than a great master of the written word, and to remember why it's important that he never be forgotten. Robert Burns was born in Ayrshire in 1759 in a modest house that's been preserved even to this day, and we actually have a little model of it on each table, so you got visual aid for it. He was the son of struggling farmers, and he was accustomed to harsh labor from a very early age. In spite of their poverty, Burns' father placed a great premium on education, and so Robert and his 6 siblings grew up reading and writing. It was this opportunity that allowed Burns to give us the gift of his poetry and his song. By his 15th year, Robert Burns had first committed to use the poet's own words, the sin of rhyme. This sin would hold fast in him for as long as he walked the turn on earth. And though he passed on at the early age of 37, his 22 years of sinning, which is to say rhyming, were very productive. Though Burns never became rich, he certainly did become famous within his own lifetime. The reason I think that his poetry and songs were so popular was because they spoke poignantly of the human condition. Now, Robert Burns was a prolific writer in both his style and tone and in his subject matter. And if you say the name of Robert Burns to someone, the first thing they're likely to mention is that he was a great poet. However, if they do mention a second name, they'll probably start making comments and judgments on his lifestyle choices. It seems so common, for example, for folks to mention that he liked to drink. Well, to be fair, Burns may have brought that one down on himself when he penned lines like, "Here's a bottle and an honest friend." And if they don't mention drinking, they might mention the 237 love poems that he wrote, each one to a different lady. But for my part, I'd like to mention tonight that in addition to Burns the poet, Burns the pub crawler, and Burns the ladies' man, there were other grander sides to him. And those are the things I like to remember. To illustrate some aspect of Burns' character that are sometimes neglected, what I want to do is relay an episode that took place during his final months. Burns was ill with persistent rheumatic fever, and his wife was soon due to give birth to his 9th child that we know of. Providing for his family was his top priority, but funds were incredibly tight. At that time, a local volunteer force, the Fencibles, was being raised in response to the war with France, and because Burns was a great patriot of Scotland, he felt strongly compelled to join. As a result of his large family, coupled with his custom of generously loaning money to friends in need, and I might add, he wasn't real good about collecting the money back then. Robert Burns, the famous poet, found himself unable to pay for his militia uniform. Rather than risk the shame of finding himself in debtor's prison at the hand of his tailor, he contacted his publisher, George Thompson, and asked for a small loan. Thompson was all too willing to aid Burns, and the reason was that Burns had traveled Scotland in search of traditional folk tunes, compiling an enormous and lucrative volume for Thompson, but refusing payment. Burns said that he would take no funds for the job, as he considered his work in preserving the musical culture of Scotland to be a labor of love for his country. In this episode from Burns' life, we can start to see a little bit of the spirit behind many of Burns' songs and poems. This story speaks much of patriotism, so I'll take a moment and recite a few verses from what might be his most patriotic work. This particular tune is also one of my favorites. It's about history. I'm a history man, so there you have it. But it's Burns' rendition of what Robert the Bruce may have said to his army on the eve of the Battle of Bennington, where the Scots were outnumbered 2-1 at least, and he looked pretty grim. So he imagined that Bruce would have said something like this. Now's the day, and now's the hour. See the front of battle lower. See approach proud Edward's power. chains and slavery. Woe will be a traitor knave. Woe can fill a coward's grave. Woe say bases be a slave. Let him turn and flee. Woe for Scotland's king and law. Freedom's sword will strongly draw. Freeman stand or freeman fall. Let him on with me. So in these verses we see Burns the patriot. But what else can we glean from the story of the bard and his tale? And what do his other works tell of the man that wrote them? Take the address to a haggis. Anyone who would think to refer to an animal's stomach as the king of the puddin' race obviously has a sense of humor. And what about Auld Lang Syne that we still sing every New Year? The hand that wrote those words was obviously a sentimental one, who knew that old friends were best. And the same hand once wrote, "The honest man, though e'er say poor, is king of men for all that." I think Robert Burns knew the human condition well enough. I think that he saw honor and dignity as the potential cornerstones of a perfect life, whether he lived a perfect life or no. So Robert Burns was a son, a father, a farmer, a husband, a patriot, a friend, a comedian, and a philosopher. But he was also a realist and a smart man, and he said that the best laid schemes of mice and men often go awry. So before that happens to me, I'm going to wrap it up. So now grab a dram if you have one, and if you don't, grab the nearest thing to you that's wet. And join me in a toast to the immortal memory of the Bard of Air, Robert Burns.
Robert
May his
Burns.
words and his spirit continue to inspire and amuse mankind forever. Cheers.
Cheers. Sláinte bán.